Hello, welcome back to another Raise3D live stream. As always, my name is Nick. I'm here in the demo studio today. I'm going to be working on one of our older Pro 2 models, something that kind of came to me in not a complete state. I'm going to go ahead and work on getting it back into printing order. It's probably going to be one of the most kind of comprehensive repairs that I've done on the stream. So just to kind of get a general overview of what I'm going to be doing, taking a closer look at this machine specifically, you'll notice it's missing a lot of the components on the printhead itself. And taking a look at the gantry from above, it actually just has the extruder carriage installed on it right now. So I did recently reinstall the rods, get the new carriage on here. We'll need to get the rest of the extruder assembly on top of this, and the filament runout sensor is going to be installed on top of that extruder. There's also the extruder connection board, the ECB, that's going to need to go in and be wired into the rest of the cable chain, which will be reinstalled. And then I'll also be doing the installation for the lower section of the printhead, which has the shifting assembly and all of the fan mountings. Then doing hot ends at the end and the heater rod and thermocouplers. So I'm really going to be going through a lot of this. And then we'll kind of just go ahead and get started, and I'll be talking as I go through it. So one of the first things that I want to get going on this machine, we'll probably do the upper section first. And then while I have the rest of that in there, work on getting the lower section. I could do it the other way, having the lower shifting assembly installed, and then we will have to work a lot of the cables kind of up through the top here. So I'll have to come through the back section. You see on the extruder carriage, so it has these sections here that's going to be for the PTFE tubes that will actually go in through the bottom, so I can go ahead and get those in now. And then the back two holes are for all of the cables that route down to the lower section here. So for the fans and then the heater rod and thermocouplers, those will all go through those bottom sections. But there are PTFE inserts that will go through the extruder carriage, and those are just going to need to be run up through the bottom. And then the tops stick out through here, and the extruder assembly is going to sit on top of those. And then also, while I'm going through this again, if you guys do have any questions on anything on our machines in general, do feel free to just drop them in chat, and I'll be answering things kind of as we go, working on both of these. But so the PTFE tubes in there, and then for the extruder section, again, the extruder has those holes there, and they just seat right on top of those. That's going to hold in the rest of the extruder assembly. So I've got that section in there, and then there's also going to need to be a cover for the ECB, so I'll need to go ahead and grab one of those. Also, there's a couple other cover components that we'll be putting on at the end. So there's a back cover for the printhead that's going to cover a lot of the cables back here, and then on the other side there's another cover for the extruder connection board. So let's see. I'm getting that on, and then we'll go ahead and, like I said, kind of work on all of this together. I'll go ahead and do the extruder connection board section first. Just want to get all of that attached. And then I'm not going to fully mount the extruder onto here, so I want to have room to work the rest of the cables back up and down for the heater rod, thermocoupler, and the fans. So we'll be working with this, mounting that securely, probably closer to the end. But right now I want to focus on the extruder connection board. So go ahead and give me a second to get my parts for that, and then I'll be right back. Got the cover for the extruder connection board. We'll have the extruder connection board here on the side as well. And then I do have a lot of things to mount kind of in that before we fully secure it on. So again, I'm working with the machine off for the time being while I'm connecting a lot of the cables. And it's also going to be pretty easy to also just connect the heater rod and thermocouplers at this stage as well. So I'll just be connecting those in and then running them down. And then we'll be reinstalling again the rest of the hot ends on the ends of those once we have everything kind of fully hanging down. So with the ECB, this is also going to be kind of a time where installing the runout sensor at the top is going to be kind of all done at once. And these also have the motor cables coming out of the top of the cable chain. So these will be for our motors, 3-pin cable for the heater rods, temperature control. This is the cable for the top of the filament runout sensor, and then of course the extruder connection cable, which is going to run a lot of the commands and be a lot of the kind of knowledge center for the board. So that's just going to plug in here for our ECB cable. 3-pin cable is going to connect into the slot for the 3-pin there. Really doesn't fit anywhere else. And then the rest of these cables will go to other components around the rest of the extruder. While we're working on this, just to get more things in place, I'll go ahead and install our filament runout sensor onto the top of the extruder right now, because that's going to, again, connect back into some of these cables. So I can go ahead and take everything from the cable chain kind of right now. So coming around the side, we'll go ahead and mount our filament runout sensor. And then for the newer extruders, they will have the portions here that kind of stick out of the top. Those should sit just underneath the holes in the front cover for the filament runout sensor. I'm going to mount that onto the side. So now that's mounted. And then there's a couple cables that go into the back of the filament runout sensor, and the one that connects from the back of the runout sensor into the extruder connection board. So this cable, actually go ahead and take our bolt and I'll mount this onto the side. The ribbon cable, or the cable chain up here, mounts into this section off of the extruder. So it'll be 2 bolts that just go through here and mount it into that frame. And then from here I can go ahead and connect this cable is going to plug into the side of the filament runout sensor. And then on the back, there's a cable here that will come out, and that connects into a port that's going to be closer on the middle of the extruder connection board. Specifically, it's going to be connecting into that port there. I'll get a better view of it again when I'm installing that, but that's going to go from there into the ECB. And there's another port back here where the cable for the shifting assembly is going to route up from the bottom, because again, that's going to be coming from these motors here mounted down below. This cable is going to route up into the back and then plug into the back of the filament runout sensor for controlling the shifting assembly. But first, I want to go ahead and get our cable chain mounted to the extruder, so that way that's going to be stable, and I can have the rest of my connections off of that. Then just taking both of our chamfered hex screws here, go ahead and seat those into that cable chain mount, and then again that's just screwing directly into the tab from the extruder. So now we have the chain mounted to the extruder. Again, the extruder is just hanging on, seating on the PTFE tubes there. I'm just kind of working with everything a little loosely while we get everything together. So from here, go ahead and connect our front motor cable. This one, yes, this should be front motor and rear motor. There is a chance, again, I don't know specifically which of these motor cables is which, so there may be a case where they'll need to be swapped later, but I'll figure that out. Front cable really doesn't want to reach over. And there we go. So we've got our front motor connected. And then we'll do the same thing for the motor on the back. And it's just these two cables that are coming out of the cable chain. There we go. Okay. So then that connection back there. Just ran that motor cable in. And then we'll go ahead and do our cable from the back of the run-out sensor into the ECB. And we can also do the run-out sensor from the chain into, the cable for the run-out sensor from the chain into the run-out sensor. We'll do that next. Route this one through just so it doesn't take up that much space. Should just go into that port in the center of the ECB. One second, just so I can see. There we go. Now, we have our run-out sensor almost fully connected. Wrap this cable through, give it a little bit more space. Connect that into the side of our run-out sensor at the top. There. So now we have the run-out sensor cable from the cable chain into the sensor to the back of the other cable that runs down into the center of the ECB. 3-pin cables mounted, extruder connection cables mounted, and the 2 motor cables are running. So it's almost everything. The rest of the components that go into the extruder connection board are going to be the heater rod and thermocoupler, and then the fans that run down to the lower section of the entire printhead. The thermocoupler is going to mount up into these upper sections, and then the heater rods will be on the side of those sections on the ECB. There are symbols on the board itself. Hopefully I can get in close enough of zoom to show these. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so on the ECB, we can see them a little bit. The options here, just on the board itself, reads HE0 and then HE1. It's a little difficult to see on there, but just trust me. And then up here, you can kind of see it behind the connector. There's like a T, should be a T1, and then this one over here does have a T0. But mostly on the heater rod, you can see them here, but you're looking for those. HE0 is going to go to the left heater rod, and then HE1 will go to the right heater rod. So they are assigned, and you want to make sure that when we're installing them in the hot ends, that we kind of keep them arranged. HE1 will go to the right, and then T1 will go to the right. Same thing with T0 for the heater rods and thermocouplers. So, getting the heater rod and thermocouplers just installed on the board itself. That one's not too complicated. There are no specific left-only heater rods or right-only thermocouplers. They're just going to be the same components for both sides. That's really only the location. That's really, really important for these. And these can be a little tricky. Just seating these into the sections on the board. Then I'm going to go ahead and tighten those screws down to get those in place. Let me see. You have a couple questions, so go ahead and jump into the chat again. Is the 4V2 on the Pro V2 and the Pro 2 the same machine? So there are, trying to remember exactly. I believe the mention for the V2 nozzles. There are different nozzles for, or entire different Hotend assemblies for the N series and the Pro series. And there's actually different Hotend assemblies again between the Pro 2s and the Pro 3s. So they are essentially different Hotends. If you are looking at the V2 nozzles on the website, I believe it will specify that they are for the N series. And the Pro 2 ones do specify they are for the Pro 2s. So it's not necessarily the version. They should say, again, which machine they are for specifically, but they are different, so you want to make sure they're getting the correct parts. Oh, and then someone did ask, again, Night Alpha, thank you very much for asking, if you can get one of these refurbished machines directly from Raise3D. You can. If you're buying, I guess, just directly through the website, those are all going to be the machines that we have in stock. If you were interested in getting, we call them the demo machines, for the ones that have been returned or had something maybe might have happened in shipping that is kind of unavoidable. We'll get those back in, we'll fix them up, and then we sell those as demo machines. Our sales team knows kind of what we have available, and then talking to them directly. If you want to just kind of give us a phone call or see if we can drop a link into the chat for access to sales, but they would be able to hook you up with the options for if there are demo machines available or not. So this will be for one of our heater rods, and getting the other heater rod mounted in there as well. Yep. As long as those are secure, we're good to go. And then for the heater rods, they essentially do not have positive and negative. We just need to have the cables connected. The thermocouplers, you do want to make sure that you have positive and negative leads in the assigned slots on the board, so that way your temperatures read correctly. If they are in the wrong direction, it's going to throw errors like that. It doesn't like to see them kind of being run in the opposite direction with those temperatures. So you do want to make sure with the thermocouplers specifically that we are installing those in the right areas. So heater rods are in, and then for the thermocouplers, these are a little bit trickier because the wiring on the thermocouplers is a lot thinner than the heater rods, and then again, like I said, they do need to have the correct leads in. So I can get a better angle on this. There we go. So getting our first thermocoupler in, you can see on the board, it's a lot easier to see in person again, but on the extruder connection board here, there is labeling for the positive and negative. It's just barely visible on camera, but I can see it here. This one specifically, the ones closer to the left, are the negative, and then just closer to that is positive. You can kind of see in there, there's a little extra notch for the plus. I know it is kind of covered up by the block itself, but this is the negative terminal, this is positive, and I'll match those again for both sides for the thermocouplers themselves. So matching up our negative lead, black to negative, red to positive. We've all studied electronics, there we go. And then tightening down our other cable for our main heater rod. And this is our T1 thermocoupler. So keep track with that one. It's going to go to our H1, which would be our lower heater rod. So both of these will go together, and then these upper two will go together. Come down from the bottom, there we go. So now we have almost all the parts for the ECB. It's going to be, again, we have extruder connection cable, kind of multicolored cable there, 3-pin cable for heating, heater rods and thermocouplers, and then the cable for the run-out sensor goes into the sensor. So I can go ahead and install the cover and mount this to the side of the extruder. And then from there, I can work on routing everything else down, getting the shifting assembly installed, and we'll be routing everything else back up. There we go. And it can be a little tricky getting the ECB cover installed and onto the back. It is very, very important that we have one of these covers in. And then that's going to kind of wrap around the outside of the board. And then there are mounting holes in the bottom and top left side. And those will go into our extruder assembly. So give me a second to get that into position. And then we'll work on getting those mounting screws in. Right about there. And the reason that I do this last, actually, you'd be thinking, oh, just mount the board now, and then it should be easier to work on while it's fixed in place. You can see, like, the way that the mountings for the cables, and it does kind of bend them in, and they have to come out like that. It's more difficult to install the cables with the entire cover on like that. So typically I'll go ahead and unmount the board. That way I have all of the room available for getting the cables into those green blocks, and then just reinstall the entire board with all the cables on it once it's done. So that'll be our one bolt for securing on that, and then getting the lower bolt on the left side, and then that'll be it for mounting the board. There we go. All right, and now, so that one took a bit more to get it to kind of seat into the rest of that mounting there, but then once it shifted and got down in there, now it's fully secured. So we have the upper section for the printhead wired. Again, it is not fully mounted, so I can continue to work down here. But now that we have all of these in place, we can go ahead and route our heater rods and thermocouplers back down. And actually I want to just go ahead and give myself a little bit of kind of extra room here, reorganize our cables a bit. We'll have these go through that side, and we'll just remount the 3-pin here. So now I'm not kind of stretching these over the 3-pin, they'll just follow down with the heater rods and thermocouples. And then again, here's where we want to make sure that we are pairing them for the left and the right. These here are our H1 and our T1, so we'll keep these two together. These will go for the right side, and then those just run down through the extruder carriage, and then come back up. If you are, usually if you're replacing heater rods and thermocouplers in a machine that isn't you know, fully apart like this, more often than not it's easiest to just loosen them from these mountings here and then pull them kind of down through the extruder carriage, and then just route the new ones down through this way as well. Working parts or working cables back up through the bottom is more difficult, but I'll also be going through a method for, you know, reconnecting fan cables and getting those through there that I find works a lot easier than trying to kind of loosely sink the cables back up through the top. So, heater rods and thermocouplers have been run through. Now, we can work on getting the shifting assembly mounted, wired, and then we'll connect the, install the hot ends, and we can actually work on calibrating and testing. So at this point, remaining printhead has all of cable chain up here and mounted, ECB is mounted now, FRS is connected, extruder motors are connected again, we'll be testing those in a second, and I just have our heater rods and thermocouplers down here ready to go. Now that we're not working on the top of the printhead, we can go ahead and shift down. We'll be looking at the shifting assembly. Actually, there's one thing that is going to be still left on the top, and that's for mounting the shifting assembly. In order to mount that, I'll need to get our camera back. Give me 1 second to switch this back. And we're back. Okay, so we'll be a little bit more careful with that cable going forward. Hopefully, it's not going to run like that on me again. But, so back to the printhead. When we're installing the shifting assembly, that entire unit is essentially going to mount snugly up to the bottom of the printhead. It's going to have, this section is going to go right up to the bottom. But the actual securing holes are going to be in these 4 corners. And these will have screws that go through the entire printing carriage and actually mount underneath the extruder assembly. So there'll be one in these 2 corners, and then the stage that drops down back here, there'll be 2 shorter ones in these back corners as well. And that's what's going to hold the rest of the shifting assembly up onto the printhead. So that is the last thing we're pretty much going to be working on as far as actually mounting and securing portions. And then the fans, when you get them routed back up here, are just going to plug into the side of the ECB. But for right now, I want to get the shifting assembly mounted onto the printhead, and then we'll do the fans and the servo cable. So we got our long bolts for mounting that shifting assembly. And then right now, one of the most important things to keep together for the shifting assembly installation. I was making sure that it seats properly with the end leads here for the PTFE tubes. These should just kind of fit right into those sections there in the shifting assembly. I'll actually go ahead and remove these fan screws while we're working on this one. But those will just seat right into that section at the top, and then everything else should be mounted here. There is one thing that you kind of want to keep in mind when you're installing this portion here. All of this is going to be right up against the base of this extruder carriage, and if you're not careful, they do kind of want to spread out and get in between these, and then there's a run if you just mount it down here, you'll end up pinching cables. You really don't want to do that. So we want to make sure that everything kind of runs through this middle open section or through here, and that way we're not going to pinch any cables here. So just getting all of these kind of out of the way, and then working our shifting assembly onto that. It is kind of now in place. It's just resting with those inserts down in there, but the rest of this is back here, and then none of it is pinched on this backside, so that's all good to go. From the top, just running our screws down through here. And then give me 1 second, I'll go ahead and adjust everything. But right now I'm just tightening the mounting screws that I showed in those corners. I'll have the rest of the shifting assembly installed. So that is just hand tighten now, so the shifting assembly will hold itself in. I want to do those 2 cables in the back, and then we'll work on routing the fan cables back up to the top. There's, again, this front fan cable, and then the shifting assembly cable from the back. There's also 2 side fans, which I'll install on this, and then we'll run all of those cables back up to the extruder connection board. Tighten down the rest of these. Again, those 4 points in the extruder carriage. The rest of this is on here. Shifting assembly is now securely mounted below, and now we want to work on getting these cables back up through the print carriage. This one's going to be a little difficult to catch on camera just because of the angles, but bear with me here while we get this going. And this is going to, usually the technique that I'll do for this one, all of our machines will come with the 1.5 millimeter diameter metal cleaning rods, and that's also what I use to help route a lot of these cables back up through the carriage to get them to the ECB, just to help kind of guide them in there, and that makes the whole process a lot easier. So actually, need to, give me 1 second here, I have to track down one of our cleaning rods. And we're good to go. Yeah, so this will be the cleaning rod that comes with the machine. This and a little bit of tape we'll be using to route those cables back up through the print carriage. We'll also want the side fans on here as well, as those are just going to follow the same path as the front fan cable and the shifting assembly cable. And then these side fans here, the way that I'm tightening these corners into the actual mounting. Normally when uninstalling those fans for like a hot end replacement or to access the collets for installing the hot ends, rather than loosening the screws for the fan itself, we can loosen the two up at the top for the mounting, and then that's going to remove the entire fan and the mounting that covers that side for the hot end assembly all at once. So there you go. That would be the entire portion of the fan coming off, so I can access that side. And that's typically how I'd be removing the fan for other maintenance, but just reinstalling the fan for the first time on new shifting assembly. Then that uses the 4 bolts into the actual duct and mounting. Yep, right fan secured in. I just want to get our other side fan mounted very quickly. All right, so that is all of the fan cables. Now, from the lower section, see if I can get a better angle on this. It is a little tricky. I mean, we're working in the back of the machine here. But essentially what I'm going to be doing is take a small strip of tape, just enough to secure the end of one of the cables onto the cleaning rod. And then essentially using the cleaning rod to guide the rest of that fan cable up through the top. I'm going to use that to kind of pull it through here. So working with our front fan cable first. Taking a bit of this, and I usually put it just kind of right up against the top of this so I can kind of have a little bit of pressure, hopefully. It is going to want to shift around a little bit, but this is just enough to keep it secured into the cleaning rod, and then we'll route this up through the back here, keeping this towards the front. Hopefully that should be secure enough. And we'll route this up through the back of our extruder carriage. Again, even with the method of using the cleaning rod to kind of guide it through, it still is very tricky to get this up through the bottom of that carriage. I actually will need a little bit of extra height so you can see from above. Hello. I'm trying to work on routing this through. So I'm almost at a point where I do kind of have that through. We'll see if I can get you guys a better view from the top. So we're almost there. I'll also use the tweezers that come with the accessories kit in the machine for trying to just grab the end of the fan cable, use that to pull that up. So on this one, right about here, you can start to see it coming up. I'll go ahead and use my tweezers just to kind of clear the alignment, and then using that cleaning rod just to push it up through the center. And that's our front fan cable. And then go ahead and pull the cleaning rod out, remove the tape, and then it's good to go. And that is just going to connect into the bottom right corner of the ECB. All three of the fans, so we have the two side fans which will go here, and then the front fan will just connect into that back corner. This port and these two ports are different from each other. This port here in the back corner, it's used for the front fan, is always going to be on. These two ports here are controlled by the touchscreen itself. So if we are setting the fan speed or have the variable fan speed, things for like 50%, it's going to be going from these ports, and that's what we want because we want to be able to control the fan speed of those side fans for per cooling. But that'll be our front fan. And now we just rinse and repeat for the other three cables. So now I'm working on our right side fan. Getting this secured to our cleaning rod again. Through it. Do I not need to use a tweezers for this one? There you go, bam! Alright, that'll be our right side fan cable. There we go. Alright, right side fan cable. Again, the one for the side fans will just plug into the ports in the middle. Two more cables to go. And then so for this one, when I'm going on the left side fan, and then also for the shifting assembly cable, because this one is a pretty long cable, I'll be running these through our left hole in the back of the extruder carriage. If we wanted to run everything through one, it just gets a bit more crowded here, so I kind of like to evenly distribute them between both sides, just so I have more room to work with. Move our extruder assembly off to the side. And there we go. Now this one is going to kind of route across the rest of these, curve up the back, and then connect into our lower port. And that is all of the fan cables. And then last thing, running our shifting assembly cable. Routing this through the same side that I just ran our left fan. This one is a little trickier because it is a bit wider than the fan cables. I do almost have it in here. Let me go ahead and hold that through there. So now I have that shifting assembly cable coming up to the side. Route that through there, and then there's the rest of our cable through the bottom. Clear out our cleaning rod. Pull our tape from the back. And there we go. So that's all of the cables routed through the extruder carriage. Last thing for this one, it's going to go up, kind of route through here, and then usually just kind of tuck it away. We'll go ahead and kind of run it through just somewhere that's not going to take up too much space. That cable, again, because of its length, can be run through a couple different places, but just for now, I'll go ahead and run it up by the side of the back of the extruder motor. Just kind of tuck it in here, and then that will go into the back of our run sensor. Yeah, in order for this one, the orientation doesn't matter here. You want it to go essentially brown, orange, red, if you're looking at it this way when you're installing that one. And then while we're at this point, so now I can go ahead and then secure the extruder onto the print carriage. I'll also install the back cover. So back cover for this. This is going to have the one portion back here and then the screw that leads through here. I seem to have unfortunately misplaced my other screw, so I'll track that one down and install it later. But for this one right now, when you are running these screws through the back, it's going to go through the back cover. It's also going to go around these cables. So you do want to kind of give them enough space just to route up. Also, if you want to have some extra cable management, zip tying the cables together back here, now's a good time. But I want to just go ahead and make sure that I have this area clear, and then run our mounting cover and the bolt through to the center. Typically, I'll go ahead and just kind of have the cover more in position already, and then it's just a matter of getting the bolt through the position. And that should be in the right area. The alignment on this one can be kind of tricky. Driving that in, making sure that's lining up straight. And we can just continue working the back cover onto this. There we go. So, like I mentioned, you would want to have both of these on here. I unfortunately just happened to have misplaced that one when I was moving it over, but I'll go ahead and install that one later. Then after this, once you have the two back covers on there, the next ones for securing the extruder are going to be mounted on the side. So for the extruder assembly, there's going to be a bolt in the side of that one there, and then also on the other side. Same thing for that extruder assembly. It's going to be a bolt in there. So one on each side there, and then the cover on the back. clean up the cables a little bit on that side. And then the other mounting bolt for the extruder is going on front. And that'll do it. So now we have the extruder fully mounted, screws on both sides, two on the back with the cover. All of this is good. Everything from the shifting assembly below has been mounted into the ECB for the fans, as well as the shifting assembly cable that goes into the back of the filament run-out sensor. At this point, now I can go ahead and install the Hotends, and then we'll be just a couple more steps away from testing. So, Hotend installation. Pretty common. I'm sure if you've been working on these machines, you've run through one of these before. So it's all going to be fairly straightforward. And again, this is just getting a simple process of getting the Hotends installed on this one. And then we'll work on calibrating afterwards. So, right now, since I've been working with running the cables back and forth, these kind of gotten a little bit mixed up. Just looking at the components themselves, kind of be hazarding a guess at which one is for left and right, but I did specifically run the right cables through the right side of the back of the extruder carriage and the left ones through the left side of the carriage, so I just need to find exactly where these are running back up to the ECB, and that'll tell me which one's left and right. So, you actually have these two need to be split. This should be our right side heater on thermocoupler. And then looking at these here, this will be our left side, so it's these two pairs. For the Hotend installation, first I want to go ahead and have the heater rod and thermocoupler installed, so just making sure the 4 grub screws in the side are loose. So we have enough clearance to run those 2 rods in. And then for this installation, usually you want to have the screws for mounting it on the outside and then the holes here towards the inside. So both Hotends, when fully installed, will be facing like that. And then there is a way that the heater rod and thermocoupler kind of seat together. You can see that the thermocoupler has this larger diameter section out here. When they are fully seated into one another, that section causes the heater rod to stop. So it won't pull out all the way on its own. And it's best to install both of them together. So they'll both just slide on smoothly there. And then I can actually go ahead and push the thermocoupler all the way forward and then tighten that one into place. And now that the thermocoupler is in position, you see the heater rod still has, again, while it's not mounted, it does have room to kind of wiggle, but I cannot pull it past that thermocoupler. So that's why, I say put them in together. You're just going to have not a lot of alignment issues. If you push the thermocoupler in first without installing the heater rod at all, then you're going to be blocking that in. If you just continue to force it, then you might bend this. We really want to avoid that. So just putting both of them in together is the best way to go. Usually I'll go ahead and just make sure that the heater rod goes far enough back, because I don't want to have it really jutting out of the front. And that'll be our first Hotend installation. So just having that mounted there. While we're here, I'll go ahead and do the second one. And we'll just follow through with all the steps after we get the heater rod and thermocoupler in. Loosening these up, I do need a little bit more space to get both of these on. A little bit more, back that out for our heater rod. And there we go. Thermocoupler goes in as well. Still need to loosen this one out so we can get it to go all the way down. And thermocoupler is now seated all the way forward, so go ahead and tighten that back down into the Hotend assembly. Push the heater rod back, tighten the heater rod down, and that will be heater rod and thermocoupler installation for our right Hotend. Now, after this, we'll just work on getting these up into the printhead. we can start testing. So, like I mentioned before, for this one, we want to go ahead and loosen the 2 side screws here for the fan that are closer to the front of the machine. There are 4 screws on the side. You only want to loosen the 2 on the front. The ones on the back mount the actual shifting servo for moving the hot ends. We don't want to throw that out of alignment, so we only really want to focus on the screws for the fan duct. So 2 screws for that side fan, and then typically they will just want to hang down like this just to keep everything out of the way. I'll actually go ahead and kind of loop them up over the gantry so they'll hang off the side. It's not going to be, as long as I'm not stressing the cables, they should just sit there well enough, and then they'll be out of the way for the rest of the installation. From here, just going ahead and mounting the hot end up into that upper collar here. So you can see that screw kind of pokes out of the back. That's going to be the tightening screw for mounting the actual hot end onto the rest of the printhead. So I'm going to tighten that down. And then there is a grub screw just above that. So we have the larger securing screw for that, and then just above that here, that one right about there. That grub screw is used for securing the collet onto kind of the lower shaft of the printhead. And I want to make sure that that is not cranked down so hard that it's preventing the larger screw from fully tightening down on that hot end assembly. So I'll just kind of go ahead and make sure that I have enough clearance. We'll tighten down the larger screw, so that is, again, uninhibited by that grub screw. This is all fully tightened and secure. And then just make sure that our grub screw is fully secured again, so that way everything is properly installed. So that's it. Tightening down the grub screw, tightening down the side screw, and go ahead and reinstall that side fan as our right side is in. For the calibrations for the Z offset for the right, probably walking through that as well. We will be removing the side fan again. But for now, I just want to make sure that everything is properly in place before we start running through kind of the initial boot up again. So both of these through here. And then spacers for that side fan, get that in place too. Go ahead and mount in our fan cover again. And there we go. It's going to be the same procedure for the left side. We'll just go ahead and get these little screws out of here. Oop. Dropped our little spacer. And the one thing that I like, just having the magnets down here in the print bed. When I'm working on parts, I always just like to make sure that we have our bolts on those magnets. Keeps them in a convenient place, so I'm not going to have them rumbling around all the machine or falling around the base. Just keeping them here, they'll stay right in place, don't have to worry about them. We got our hot end back in position. Go ahead and tighten this one back down. There we go. So that's definitely secure in there. And then just again, checking for grub screw. That's still, again, has enough in there where it's holding the collet on, but not so much that it's, you know, tightening down and adding extra force in the opposite direction of where we want this to be tightening down for the hot end. If it had a little bit more room there. Let's bring that in. That's fully tightened. We'll go back and touch on that grub screw. That's tightened as well. So now we have everything in. Both hot ends fully secured. Mounted the heater on thermocouplers. Reinstall that side fan. And then we should be good to run through its tests. One bolt in our side fan mounting, lower bolt in there as well, and that should complete our printhead assembly. Ta-da! All right, so now we can go ahead and start it up. All right, so far, so good. Good indications on the filament runout sensor. No sparks, that's always something we want to avoid. And yeah, we'll give it a section to boot up. What I'm looking for specifically, making sure that the runout sensor is on. I'll probably test that later while it is printing. For this section, just to kind of wrap up the stream for today, I'll just be going through some heat up tests, make sure that the hot ends again are assigned correctly and that those are heating up properly, sensing temperatures correctly. I'll want to just step the extruder motors a little bit, so I'll make sure those are running the right directions. And then from there, then I can go ahead and go into a full test print. But right now, again, testing motion, testing the heating of the machine. That's going to be really, really important. And then from there, I can go into running G-code. So right now, it hasn't thrown any errors, which is a good sign. If there's an issue with the extruder connection cable, oftentimes it will throw an error immediately, just because it's looking to make sure, hey, are we sensing the temperatures from the thermocouplers? If it's not getting a signal it's expecting, for example, not getting any signal at all if the ECBs, the extruder connection cable is disconnected, then it'll throw an error. But right now, no errors, so we're looking good so far. One thing I want to go through, I'll just kind of go through some smaller steps here. For the side fans, I can go ahead and test those without any issue from the touchscreen itself. Going to the tune screen, the setting for the fan speed is set to 0, just to kick those side fans on to full speed. Set them to 100. Changes our issue here, and then we are spinning on that right side fan. And then also the left side fan, so those two are connected properly and working. Front fan is already spinning. And again, that starts up right when the machine's turned on because that port is always active. We can go ahead and test our heating. So for the Pro2s, in order to manually shift the hot ends, I want to test the shifting assembly. I also want to start driving the extruder motors. There's a minimum temperature that needs to be set for the hot ends in order to basically function all those portions. So from the touchscreen, I want to go to 180. This will also serve as our initial heat test. And then usually when I'm heating up the machines, I'll go kind of in increments. I don't want to go straight to 250 or 300, just in case there is, something that isn't quite right. I want it to happen in a lower temperature, not when it's giving, full power to try and heat everything up as quickly as possible. But right now we do have our left temperature set for the left hot end. The left hot end temperature is climbing. If, for example, you set the right hot end or set the left hot end temperature here and the right one starts climbing, that is of course something that we do not want to have. Then you would just look at figuring out again which parts you have in which hot ends, getting those swapped as needed just to make sure that everything is tied to the sides that it should be in. But for this one here, it is climbing up to 180 on the left. I'll go ahead and also run the temperature for our red extruder. And this one again should start heating up no problem. And while I'm running all these tests as well, I'll go ahead and just make sure that our bed heats up properly. And while this gets up to temp, I'll walk through the steps for how I'm going to manually shift these Hotend assemblies. Right now, it looks like the right nozzle might be in a lower position, so I want to go ahead and just shift both. But in order to do that manually, once the nozzles get up to 180 again, on the utility screen, I'll go ahead and highlight which extruder we want to actively lower. So for this case, I'm going to go ahead and try the left first, have the left highlighted. And then with that nozzle highlighted, it doesn't actively shift until we hit the up or down arrows, and then it tries to drive the highlighted extruder. When we are switching that or giving it the step in order to make the shift command, it does follow the amount of move steps up at the top. So if we have it set to 10 millimeters, essentially what it's doing, if it was going to step in the X or Y or Z axis, if it's moving an axis, it will move the printhead essentially 10 millimeters in that direction. If I'm doing it for the extruders, if I'm stepping these with the setting for 10 millimeters, it's going to run the motor for 10 millimeters of material, or 10 millimeter distance of extrusion, and that is going to take a bit longer. This motor runs a bit slower, so it's not just a quick step. It does slowly extrude. So just for the sake of speed, I don't want to have it dragging on all that time. It does kind of build a queue of commands. So if I did 10 millimeters of left, shift right, shift left, shift right, then it's going to do 10 millimeters between each step. If I have it set to 0.1, it's just a bit quicker in the way that it's shifting. All right, so let me see. I think we're getting some shifting there. It might not be perfect. Left nozzle down, right nozzle down, left, right. Okay, so it does look like we haven't quite pinned down this shifting assembly. That left nozzle is dropping, and left nozzle back up. So typically this is something with the collets, or just the way that the Hotends are secured into the rest of that printhead. I'll go ahead and turn our fan speed down to 0. There we go. So now our side fans aren't going to be spinning while we're working on these. And then right now I just want to have the side fans removed. I am working with things a lot more carefully now that machine is live and the Hotends are hot. Yep. So now we have our right Hotend component. And then for this one, I'll go ahead and just bring our Hotends down. So we're not going to be touching anything. I know that they're heated. It's not going to cause any damage to the machine with them this way. We just want to be, again, very careful while things are moving like this. And I'm looking specifically to make sure that the collet on that shifting assembly is moving with the rest of this. It didn't look like that right Hotend was moving at all while I was making these shifts. So, go ahead and shift our right side back down. I think that one is actively lowered already. So shifting back to the left. We do have, yeah, that left Hotend comes down, but I don't think the right is coming back up exactly. So that did bring the collet down back to the left side. That collet should be coming up when the left side is switched back down. Okay, it is coming up a little bit on its own. So I think that that should be good for now. Might also just take a couple more shifts to kind of break this shifting assembly in. But the mechanism itself does appear to be working without the Hotend installed, so we won't need to do any more intense repairs here. I'll just go ahead and reinstall that Hotend, and then we'll try shifting it again. And then now I am using my hand tools here because that Hotend is heated. I do not want to touch that directly. Alright, so right Hotend is secured back into the printhead. See if we can shift this back down. Right nozzle comes back down, left nozzle goes back up as we shift back again. Now we are getting a full shift. So, very important to test everything before going straight into a print. But yeah, just one more for good measure. Left shift down, shift back again. Now we're good to go. Let me see. I think I did. There we go. I did drop our spacer when moving that first side fan, but found it again. Line this back up. Get our fan reinstalled, no problem. All right. So, fans reinstalled. Test shifting assembly once more for good measure. That's still working great. So now I can go ahead and work on getting this one calibrated. A couple last finishing touches as well. So, build plate, that's going in. Secure those down with the thumb screws on the front. And then, as the kind of last touch on this machine specifically, the feed tubes that go from the top of this to the top of the printhead. So you have some more tubing here. It is, I believe, 3mm outer diameter, 2mm inner diameter tubing. So if you wanted to have extra tubing for other portions, or you know, replace the tubing on the machines that you'd be looking at, that's just going to run from here into the top of the printhead, and same thing for our other side tube into those quick couplers, and then to the top of the printhead. So there we go. That'll be good for now. Working on our calibrations. So just to touch this one up, I'll be going through the Z offset calibration for the machine, just to get it running for kind of the single print for now. There is also the test print for calibrating X and Y. There's a guide on our website, and I believe we have some other videos on doing the X and Y calibration as well. But essentially, we would go through, pull the, I believe it's the dual extruder offset idea file. If you go to File, Examples, and then Calibration Parts, it's listed under there. That'll just pull the file into IdeaMaker directly. But essentially, based off that test print, that's how you'll get your values for calibrating the X and Y offsets, and those are set in the touchscreen. It's just going to be under Settings. Let me see, Machine, More Settings, then we'll go to Hardware, and then Extruders. So we do want to have the Enable Extruder Offset started for the initial section. Since this was a full reinstall, I'm going to reset this back. There were values for the extruder offsets in here already. See 25.1 and negative 0.13. The default ones that I'll start for calibrating are going to be 25 in the x-axis and then 0 for the right extruder for the y-axis. And then based off the results for the test print, again, the guide will walk through kind of how to read that. But essentially, after you print out the tower, you're looking for two sections here. Actually, I do have one of these towers. You'd be printing out this tower, and you'd be looking at for which two faces are flush. And then it does have a label for the X side and the Y side. So in this direction, I'd say I'm looking at you know, these two faces being the most flush, and then you take the upper value of the two faces. So this would be negative 0.4. On the machine that this came off of, I would add that directly into the value here. So for the Y direction, I'd go to just negative 0.4. If I was doing that adjustment to the X axis, then I would go to 24.6 because it's just added directly onto the existing value to make that adjustment. But just for the Z offset, we are, again, holding temperature on the bed, so that's great. All of these look like they're holding temperatures as well, so I'm not too worried about them heating. I'll go ahead and leave them at 180 to continue shifting, and then they should be able to heat up again to PLA and ABS temperatures. I'm not worried about those now at this point. They're holding stable. But for calibrating the Z offset, for this machine, I mean, actually, I just now noticed we are missing the pin assembly for these side beds. So go ahead and grab a new one of those really quick, and I'll work on installing that. I do have a replacement Z-pin assembly. And then this whole unit, now that I actually have it out of the machine, is a couple different ways to adjust this one. So on this assembly, this whole thing that mounts onto the side of the bed here, there's this thumb screw on the side that holds in the rest of the assembly for making small adjustments in the Z-axis. If I loosen this thumb screw, then the entire kind of pin here will drop out of the rest of the mounting. This can be used for making much larger adjustments to the overall height of this. So I'll go ahead and just kind of make sure that I'm in a good position for like a range that I want to have these set to. And then from here we can make smaller adjustments with the lower thumb screw, and that's going to raise and lower the pin much kind of more fine-tuned on this one. So using the larger one for just major adjustments, and then making minor adjustments in this, and of course you can use the two to get you into the correct position. But that just mounts onto, one second, here's a little difficult angle. That just mounts directly onto the side of the bed here. Now, since I'm going to be homing this bed just directly to this home with a brand new Z-pin, I actually want to go ahead and loosen this. We'll put it in a pretty high position so I don't have to worry about clearance. I'm probably going to have more than enough space between here. We'll go ahead and home our X and Y axes. So that works. And then we'll home our Z axis. And then of course, whenever I'm homing the Z axis or going through the calibrations here, it is going to be just rotating the Z lead screws. So it goes up initially, triggers the Z sensor, and then lowers itself and very slowly raises itself back up. And then if I need to do any kind of other inputs for like shifting the hot end, that's going to take place after the Z axis stops. So always just make sure I'm watching the Z lead screws here. Those will be rotating, and then when those stop moving, then I'm good to go. You can see we did have the print bed stop pretty far away from the nozzles just because I had that extra clearance, like I said, for a brand new Z mounting pin. So for this, I'll go ahead and back off the pin so I have a lot of extra distance to work with. And then I can go ahead and lower this few, probably just about a centimeter. and tighten that back down. So I give myself a lot more spacing. And I'll go ahead and rehome the Z-axis. I'm just going to kind of incrementally step it closer and closer to getting that plate to the hot end. There we go. Now, I'm just running the feeler gauge from the accessories kit underneath that nozzle. And I'm looking for a position where I can get the feeler gauge underneath the nozzle, but it doesn't feel like there's too much tension. This does have quite a bit of tension on that, so I'll go ahead and turn this towards the back of the machine and then rehome the Z-axis to find our new position. And then from there, once I have our position locked down for the left hot end, then what I want to do is keep the bed in its position there, and then we'll remove the side fan and drop the right hot end onto the feeler gauge again. Making a little small adjustment. I just wanted to, I kind of overshot it in increasing the gap there, so it wasn't making contact with the feeler gauge. Just made a small adjustment to bring it a little bit closer, and this should be either the last or close to the last adjustment for the left hot end. There, yeah, that's about good. So with the left hot end position set, I'm going to go ahead and engage the right hot end. That'll shift us down. And actually, we're in a pretty good place. It's just barely, I'd say, just a hair above where I would want it to be perfect. So go ahead and remove this side fan again. And then for adjusting that right offset, it is very, very close already. But I want to go ahead and we'll loosen the larger hex bolt in the side. And then once that's loose, our right hot end has a little bit more wiggle room there. And then really I'm just dropping it on top of the feeler gauge itself. So we do have enough height there that feels like it's just barely touching. And I'll go ahead and tighten that back down into the position. And then I can go ahead, while I'm at this position, switch back to the left and right. They should have the exact kind of feeling of tension on that feeler gauge. If you want to come back and make slight adjustments, oftentimes I'll use another tool to kind of use just a small amount of leverage to get these to be in the right position, but this one actually ended up being, you know, very, very close and pretty easy to get to the exact area where I wanted it. But now that left and right nozzle I calibrated for the Z offset, at this point I could start single extruder printing with either side, and then I'm definitely in a good enough position to start the test prints for the X and Y. I'm just going to go ahead and get this last fan on, and we are almost done. All right, so I think that's going to do it today for the repairs on this machine. I have a couple more test prints to run on it, and then of course it'll basically be ready to be sold as a demo. So, I mean, again, I want to thank everyone for joining me in the demo studio today. I hope this was, helpful, give you a much better idea of what to work on the Printhead, and if you have any other questions, again, we're always available for things like coming into the demo studio to look at new machines, things like that. If you like this video, let us know. I'd love to do more things like this, but that's going to do it for us today, and I will see you in the next stream. Thanks, guys.